Good evening, class. Tonight's video notes are on solving quadratic equations by factoring. So I want to remind you where the solutions are located when looking at a quadratic function. So if you look at a graph and you look at a quadratic function, remember that the solutions are located on the x-axis. So in this case, the solution would be x equals 0. Now if I shift this down a couple units down, notice the solutions. There's two of them this time. X equals -1 and x equals +1. So that's what we're trying to find. We're trying to find where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Those are called the solutions. Those are called the roots, x-intercepts, or zeros. So we're going to solve by factoring. We're not going to use our calculator. Okay? So the first step is to set each equation equal to 0. So when you look at the equation, it's not equal to 0. So we want to zero these out. So to zero them out, we're going to cancel them by using the additive inverse property. So we're going to subtract the x. Remember, though, when you do something to one side, you have to do it to the other side. So that's going to cancel out. Then to cancel out the plus 30, using the additive inverse property again, we will subtract 30 on both sides. Okay, so now let's write our new equation. So we start with the highest exponent, which is known as the degree of the polynomial. Then the next highest exponent, which in this case is 1. And then the constant, or the number, by itself goes last. And then, of course, it's going to be equal to 0. So you just need to cancel them out. Make sure that you set the side equal to 0 when the x squared is positive. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. We want the x squared term to be positive. Okay? So now factoring this. Well, x squared breaks down to x and x. So we want two numbers that multiply to 30, and the middle number is 1. So I know 6 and 5, they have a difference of 1, and they multiply to give me 30. Now I just need to get the right signs. So since this is -1, I want my bigger number to be negative. Now let's see if this works. -6 times 5, -30. -6x and 5x is -1x. So I just factored that. I did that in my head. Remember, you can use the x factor to factor this. So next step. So we factored it completely. Set each factor equal to 0. So we're going to start with x minus 6, set it equal to 0, and then the other factor. This is the zero product property that we're applying here, the zero product property. Okay, so adding 6 on both sides so we can solve for x, so we know that one solution is 6. And subtracting 5, the other solution is -5. And these are the two places where the parabola crosses the x-axis, known as the solutions, zeros, roots, x-intercepts. Okay, let's go ahead and go down here to number 3. We'll see if we have time to come back. I don't want this to be too long of a video. You guys already know how to factor. The steps are all written at the top of the page. So notice that this quadratic is already set to 0. So all we need to do is factor this. So notice we don't have 3 terms. We only have 2 terms. So first thing I want to do is, can I factor out a common term? So hopefully you notice that there's an x in both terms. So I can factor out an x. So x squared, factoring out an x out of x squared, I get x. Factoring out an x out of 2x, or negative 2x, we get negative 2. Okay, so if I distribute, we get x squared, we get negative 2x. So I factored it. Okay, next step, set each factor equal to 0. So remember that this leading term is a factor. How do I know this? Because it's being multiplied times this group. Factors are terms or groups that multiply together to get something else. So x equals 0. That's going to be one of our solutions. So x is going to be 0. And then the other one, we set that factor equal to 0. Add 2 on both sides. X equals 2. Easy, right? Just set the two factors equal to 0, and you have your two solutions. Just always remember, very important, make sure it's equal to 0. Okay, let's go down to number 4. Now, this goes back to what I was talking about before. I don't want you to think that the 0 always has to be on the right. Okay? That the 0 always has to be on the right. It doesn't. Look at number 4. Remember what I said earlier? I want the x squared to be positive. Is it positive? Yes. So that means I'm going to have my 0 over here on the left side instead. So I'm going to cancel these out using the additive inverse again. Canceling them out. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other side. Okay? So notice where my 0 is. That's okay. That's okay. So starting with my largest exponent, descending to my constant. Now we need to factor. So let's go ahead and factor this together. Notice that all three terms of this trinomial are divisible by 2. So I'm going to factor out a 2 first. Okay? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to factor this. I think I can do it. Usually you can. Okay? Let's see. X squared breaks down to x times x. Let's see. 4 and 3, and now 6 and 2. Yep. How did I know that? Well, 6 times 2 is 12, and the difference in 6 and 2 is 4. So now all I have to do is get the signs right. Well, so my middle term is negative, so I'm going to make my larger one negative and my smaller one positive. Now remember, I'm taking a shortcut here. To factor this, you may want to use the x that I showed you. Okay? So, next step, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So, notice that 2 is a factor, but there's no x involved. So we do not have to set this number equal to 0. There's nothing to solve for. So we're going to set x minus 6 to 0, x plus 2 to 0, and we're going to solve those using the 0 product property to set them equal to 0. X equals 6. Subtract the 2. X equals negative 2. So those are our solutions. Now, I would like you to attempt number 3 on, or excuse me, attempt number 2 on your own. I will be checking to see if you got it tomorrow. Can't wait to see you guys. Hope you had a good day. Bye.